Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited because, this has been a bit of a stretch for us, learning how to take what is quite an interactive webinar and a seminar, and then create a new format for sharing this information. So normally we deliver this as a workbook and you get to fill out and it's very interactive. So there's some challenges here, but I'm pretty excited to work with you all today to open up some of the questions surrounding downsizing. I apologize in advance if you are a bottom line, get to the final conclusions kind of statement, because today is not about that. Today is really about casting more of a vision for what downsizing can do for you. So I really like to start in the realm of kind of the high level thinking. And then in the second seminar next week, part 2, we'll get into some nitty gritty and I'll share with you what we're going to get to when the time comes. So with no more introduction, let me just move on and let you know who I am and why I started doing these webinars. Well, first of all, I'm a downsizing specialist. I'm a realtor who works with Keller Williams, and I figured out who I wanted to work with, the people in my neighborhood, the people who were just that little step ahead of me in terms of being empty nesters who might be ready to consider downsizing. And for me, it was a no-brainer. This is who I really wanted to work with. And when I started my business, I got the same questions over and over again. People were coming to me and saying, well, I don't know if this is the right time to downsize. And I have so much stuff to deal with in my basement and even in my personal life. I'm not sure if this is the right time to even be considering this journey. And it is a journey. So I decided that I was going to create a series of webinars. First of all, they were seminars, now they're webinars, and write a book to accompany this, just so that I could really reach out and meet the needs of a lot more people than going door to door in North Richvale where I live. Okay, so let's get started. I want to share with you, first of all, a great big welcome. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be with us on our Wednesday webinars. We're going to go, as I mentioned, kind of from the higher perspective about downsizing as it fits into the totality of your retirement. Like, whether or not you sell your house is not the issue today. The issue is, what is the plan you envision? What is the future that you would like to embrace? And maybe your house is a part of that, maybe it's not. So let's look at the motivations. We're going to identify some of the obstacles and then try to work toward creating a vision for what downsizing might do for you. And then we'll consider some of our other offers. Okay, so moving on, we have our first consideration. What are your motivations for being here today? This session is an introductory session. As I mentioned, there is a part 2, and we're just trying to establish, is this the right time to consider downsizing? And we want to work together to create a plan A and a plan B. Maybe plan A is to stay in your home as long as you can, but maybe not. Maybe there's a plan B that also is worth consideration, and let's just figure that out together, shall we? So you are most likely joining us for one of 2 reasons. Either your home has become more of a burden than a blessing, or you anticipate the time when that will be the case. So many people I encounter push off the decision about what to do about their downsizing until, in a way, it feels like it's too late, that there was a window of opportunity where they should have decided before it got too difficult, and now that opportunity has passed, and it's a much more onerous burden to try to get out of the home and get into a place where they can establish a bit more freedom in their lives. So I congratulate you for being here, that you are going to decide to decide. That seems rather protracted, I understand, but making no decision is a decision, as we all know. You can just keep procrastinating and pushing it into the future until the future comes back and bites you in the tuchus. So let's just look at what some of the considerations about this whole decision is. Put it in the context of the fact that everyone will eventually downsize. It's a matter of whether you are calling the shots, or if it's because circumstance or your health or your finances dictate it. So I know that for me, I make best decisions when I've got some forethought that's happening. So to be proactive in making a decision that dramatically affects your life is far superior decision making than having to make a knee-jerk reaction that is on an urgent basis. The stress goes up, the complications and the possibilities for difficulties go up exponentially. So to make a plan and then figure out under what circumstances will we execute on this plan. That's the real purpose for this today, is to figure out the destination and exactly what route we're going to take. So we're going to stay in the realm today of why. Why would you consider downsizing? And we're going to put that in the context of your life. Like I said, you see our logo behind us, or maybe you can't, but this is only one piece of your life. And we want to make sure that the whole life comes together as much as we possibly can. Make sense? So this decision is in the context of a bigger concern, and that is the fact that inevitably, if you push this decision off, you will lose control over it. We've seen this with our older parents, or in my case, my grandparents. The decision ended up being made for them because they just refused to kind of budge from the current status quo. And I have to tell you that that kind of decision making terrifies me, because it's really a major concern for my client base is losing control. And so by remaining in the driver's seat, you're much more likely to arrive at the destination of your own choosing. So let's step back and understand what the motivations to even consider downsizing might be. And there is no right or wrong here, and there is no outcome that I'm going to prescribe for you. It's your life, it's your house, it's your money. But let's just understand what some of our drivers are, because every time you say yes to one thing, one picture of your future, you are also automatically saying no to a bunch of other ones. Makes sense? So let's look, for example, where you, oops, sorry, went the wrong direction. I have my little arrows. What are your values? That's what really should be informing this decision. What's important to you? What kind of legacy do you want to leave? And what kind of future do you want to live? So this is a very interesting transition period where you are both looking forward and looking back. And so let's create what is your ideal. Take, for example, where you lie on the continuum between being somebody who is highly motivated by concerns of freedom and people who are highly motivated by worrying about stability. If you were to place yourself on this continuum, where would you put yourself? Are you more interested in freedom, or are you more interested in stability? It's not a rhetorical question. I mean it for you to literally kind of figure out where you are on this, because if you're a freedom-based person, then it's going to influence the kind of decisions and options that you should be considering. However, if you're on the other side, and the vast majority of people are, maybe as much as 60% are leaning towards the stability side, you want to make decisions that meet that need and enhance that value in your life. Do you see what I'm getting at? So no right or wrong, but where are you on this list, or on this scale between freedom and stability? Now, I've tied this and those examples to real estate. If you're a person who is up for the adventure of a totally new freedom from suburban living, maybe you are willing to spend half a year in Costa Rica and half a year, up here in Toronto visiting with family. Other people, wherever you go, it's going to be in a place where you're familiar. So when we link this to real estate, it starts to bring some clarity. And that's the name of the game today, is that I want to bring you clarity, because clarity, I firmly believe, is power. So when you have clarity and you understand what is driving you, then it's going to come to a better conclusion. The issue sometimes is when we have spouses who are on different ends of the continuum, and negotiating a happy medium for them both is tough. Okay, so we really want to know and have that kind of conversation. So let's take a quiz. Let's work together, and I'm going to read you through some common concerns that I have heard. These are real life examples of people that I have spoken with, and we're going to try to place you in one of 4 broad categories. I understand that everyone is a mixture of motives, but if we can kind of identify your characteristic motivation, then it's going to also help us create a good conclusion for you. So let's talk about the relational people in our group here today. These are people who are saying to themselves things like, when we downsize, we plan to move to a community near our kids. Or they're saying we have deep community connections and we'd not want to move away from them. Or you're saying to yourself, my friends are an important support group and I can't imagine my life without them. And many of you tell me this, well, what about my clubs and my memberships and my activities? I can't leave those. And then others say, well, wherever I move to has to have people in my own age group living there. So do you see, these are drivers where people are not going to go off to Costa Rica because it doesn't match their value. And their value is continuing deep felt connections, whether to family, faith groups, social connections, whatever it is. So I hear quite a bit that people have a hard time leaving their neighbors, that we have the best neighbors, that we've lived together for 30 odd years, and it's hard for me to leave my neighbors. Well, the issue is, though, your neighbors will be leaving eventually too. So it's important, for example, if you live in Thornhill and you're a high blue, well, we want to keep you in Thornhill as much as possible. Okay, so where's my next slide? Is all about the people who are these experiential people. They are the people who are ready for a new challenge. Somewhat this is personality driven, somewhat this is age and stage determined. People who are in the younger part of their retirement time might feel more of a drive to accomplish some of those bucket list items, where people who have been there, done that, they're in a different mindset, and that's perfectly okay. But let's just think, are any of these resonating with you? We're free. It's time to shed suburban living and finally live for us. It's our dream to spend winter somewhere warm and winter free. A new chapter is new possibilities. It's time to reinvent myself or ourselves. We plan to check out a great new development out of town. Who knows, maybe we'll just rent for a year and have an adventure. Again, do you see how when we tie it back to real estate, people who are experiential are going to consider a different set of options than people who are relational? And I know we're all a mix. Maybe you are somewhat in both camps, but it really is important to understand what makes you happy. So again, we can get there together. There we go. Those are the experiential. There's part of me who would love to kick off my suburban living and go downtown and live in the entertainment district just to experience it. Not a huge duration of time, not the rest of my life, but wouldn't it be fun just for 3 or 5 years to live downtown and, you know, go at all the trendy restaurants and see all the shows, you know, presuming they all open up again, right? Now, this to me is the biggest segment of the people I encounter. And these are the people who are considering downsizing strictly for the practical concerns of it. And I hear things like, well, why keep this 2,500 square foot house when we only really live in 3 rooms of it? Or all of this space is such a waste of time and effort and money. Those are the 3 things we really want to focus on: time, effort, and money. Between lawn work in the summer and snow shoveling in the winter, we're exhausted. I can manage all this, but the question is, do I really want to? More stuff equals more worries. I'm ready for a carefree retirement. So you can see that these people in the yellow zone, they don't have any urgency to this decision making. It's just simply that their house doesn't make sense anymore. That it was supposed to be the family home, the nest, right, where the kids grew up, and you loved living in this neighborhood because of the soccer pitches and the shopping and the good schools and the big lots. That's all terrific, but you know, there's not too many of us who really love the amount of work and time and money that it takes to keep a house going, when it's really bigger than you need. Now, one of the statistics that I ran across in the Toronto Star was that there are 2.2 million empty bedrooms in the GTA. Well, I'm sitting in one of my empty bedrooms right now. You know, I have 2 out of the 4 bedrooms in my house are empty right now. So I completely fall into that category. And the other statistics that I read were that 70% of seniors are overhoused. So you might not be a senior yet, but you can see the time when you have more house than you need. And a lot of us are counting on, at least partially, the equity that we have in our home to finance a retirement that we will enjoy. The problem is you cannot pay for a cruise with bricks and mortar. You actually have to liquidate that asset before you can realize the benefit. So I really hope that nobody in our watching audience today is in this critical path. These are people for whom there is an urgency. It has gone well beyond choice, and now they are really looking to get out of their house because it's critically important. So these are people who say things to me like, oh, ever since the accident, I really can't manage the stairs so well. Or my kids are worried that this house has gone from being a blessing to a burden. Or this is a sad one, but people who are still in debt, and the only way to get out of debt is, and they're going to have to sell the house. Or people who worry about their well-being financially, emotionally, or physically. Or we don't have the money to pay for the leaking roof, or the faulty electrical panel, or the malfunctioning furnace, or the crack in the basement, where they just kept pushing off the maintenance that is going to keep the property value up, so that we have properties that are almost derelict because they just don't have the money to keep them up. Or even worse, they're in arrears on their property taxes. It's a really bad situation, and unfortunately, I do see it. I do see it. I've had a client who had a 4-bedroom home. beautiful home. She had a stroke, had mobility issues, and her dining room became her bedroom. So it's a really tough go for people who are in this category. And I'm going to hope and pray that that's no one I'm speaking to today. So where do you fall in this continuum? What is your main motivation to consider downsizing? Just to recap your options. And if we were together, I'd actually ask you to write this in your workbook. So what is it? Are you all about continuing in your relational pursuits? Like that's a high motivation for you. So it's about continuity and community and family, all of these things. So many of us have family now who live further afield. Does that ever come into conversation? Which of your kids will you live closer to? You know, that's a decision you got to kind of make. And I have lots of people who say, well, I've got a kid in King City and I've got a kid in downtown. Put me in the middle. So what about experiential? Maybe you're ready for a fresh start and you'd like a bit of an adventure. How easy is it to travel when you've got to have a home checked in on every couple of days to keep your insurance current? Lots of us are living in homes that actually kind of trap us rather than give us that new lifestyle that we're hoping for. Maybe it's simply the matter of practical considerations like managing rather than really thriving, having maintenance costs and having to pay for an increasing group of people to help you maintain your home. And you're not quite sure that it actually is being maintained. We sold clients out of their beautiful home in the Mill Pond area, and they couldn't take care of the gardens any longer. And they didn't like the way the gardening company was taking care of them. It was more of an irritation to them than a help to have the company come. So it just got to a point where they said, practically, this is not working for us. And then we talked, about people who are in the critical decision-making scenario. So all of these, if you understand your motivation, they have a kind of implied timeline. If you're in the red zone, we're probably talking, we need to be getting going right now because we've got a 3 to 6 month window before things really deteriorate even further. The rest of you, if you're in the blue or the green or the yellow considerations, those are not as time sensitive. It's going to be more about what fits for you and establishing a timeline that is much more personal. Okay, so you haven't downsized yet, obviously, or you wouldn't be watching today. So what is it that has held you back? What are the things that have stopped you from doing what you know you should do? You might even want to do, but you just haven't done it yet. Again, there is nothing new under the sun. Anything pretty much you tell me, I'm going to have heard before. And it's something we can talk about individually. And I'm happy to work with you to brainstorm a solution. So let's look at this list of possible obstacles to moving forward. I don't know where to go. This is too daunting emotionally right now. I can't face all the work. It's a bad time right now because of the market. My house needs a lot of work in order to sell. I don't want to leave my gardens. What will I do with all my stuff? And what about my parents' estate and my children's stuff? How is that going to fit into a smaller house? Oh, I don't like condos. They're small, they're boxy, they have high maintenance fees. What will I do with Mr. Boots? That's a cat. Or Fido. We have a cottage, but I don't want to live there in the winter. This is going to take a lot of money. My husband's health isn't very good right now. And finally, this is the one I love. They're going to take me out in a pine box. I hear all of these. Maybe you have something else very specific to your own circumstance. But if you know what the obstacle is, you can start figuring out a solution to it. I have to say, I love this word, figure outable. We haven't gotten this far in life without overcoming far more serious, bigger obstacles than downsizing. And you already have solutions that are figure outable. You just have to realize them. Like let's talk a couple of these because they're very, very common. I don't know where to go. Well, I think like a lot of things, it's a process of elimination. You start saying where you don't want to go, and that eliminates 75% of the options. And then once you get down to one or two or three different possibilities, then the next step, of course, is to research them and figure out. Can I also tell you something that comes with being an adult that I know you already have figured out? But there isn't very much in life that is irreversible. Let's just say worst case scenario. You decide that you're going to get into a townhouse and you spend a year in the townhouse and you think, geez, this really isn't for me. I don't like this. I don't like this location, or I don't like this property, or, you know, I made a foolish decision for whatever you think. Well, guess what? It's reversible. You're not stuck there. We're not asking you to commit to a life sentence of one particular option without excluding all others. We are resourceful people and we can figure out what would work better. And sometimes you do have to kind of try things on. And that's why we're going to get into some property options next week that you might not have considered. Okay, let's talk about some of the other pragmatic things, like I don't want to leave my gardens. Well, what about a smaller property with a smaller garden? That way you still get to exercise your love and creativity of gardening. This is exactly what my parents did. They have a modest sized bungalow with a nice yard that they can manage on their own. And it's a great joy for my mom. I can't imagine her not having a way of exercising that, you know, muscle, that gardening muscle. So it's figure outable. We just have to find the right option for you. Let's talk about condos. Well, you know that I think condos have a lot of merit as a potential option, and we are going to get into condos next week for sure. But you really have to, you owe it to yourself to investigate your various options so that you can make a good decision. Don't just presume you know the answer. Really, you know, spend some time looking into it. Do a little bit of legwork. I know there's lots of people who have this idealized community that they want to live in. Maybe it's like Picton or Niagara on the Lake. Well, why not just go figure that out by spending some time there and seeing, is this something that would suit me long term or even in the short term? You're not making a decision today for the duration of your life. You're making a decision for what is the foreseeable future. And if circumstances change, you'll adapt and pivot and turn and take a new direction. So the last one is so funny. They're going to take me out in a pine box. It's funny because I hear it, but in another way, it's a little bit sad, because if you've ever had to deal with a parent's estate, it's the worst. It is sad. It is bureaucratic. It is slow. There are all kinds of implications to the people who are having to do it, whether that's tax or inheritance or any of the kind of legal constraints that you have to go through. Why would you do that to your kids? Like, I know they were rotten little teenagers. Really, wouldn't it feel much better to know that your affairs are in order and that you can do it on this kind of side, this side of eternity where, you know, other people won't be burdened with it, right? So I know that the Swedish have this idea of like the Swedish death cleaning. What a terrible, macabre idea. But the whole notion is that you hit a certain age and you start whittling away your unnecessary belongings, so that by the time you do exit, you're not leaving that much behind. Like, I kind of almost imagine these very pragmatic Swedes just having like a good set of clothes, their regular clothes, and a nightgown, something to be buried in, and everything else is gone. I'm not suggesting we take it that far, but really the principle is the same. You either do it now while you're capable, or you leave it to your children, and you might not like the decisions they end up making. So those are some of the obstacles. What is your biggest blockage, or our biggest blockage? This is a place in our workshop where we would actually brainstorm some solutions. I think most of the time we just feel stuck because we haven't really put pen to paper. I know that's the way I make, decisions and learning, is that I just have to write it down and figure out what are all the things that are holding me back, and then kind of debunk them in a sense. When we bring things from the back of our minds and bring them out and put them on paper and start talking about them with the people around us, it's amazing how it de-escalates them. They really diminish in size when they start getting talked about. Maybe it's the practical consideration of how much stuff is in your house. The garage is chock-a-block, the basement is filled up. What am I going to do with this stuff? Well, what could you do with it? There's a whole bunch of different options you could do with it. It's not one, quick fix, wave a magic wand, and the whole situation is taken care of. It's going to take a plan. As a matter of fact, those of you who know us know we have a plan about decluttering. That's basically what we're talking about. If your biggest blockage is the fact that you don't know how to deal with the stuff, then we have resources. You just have to reach out to us, and we will connect you either with our resources that are kind of do it yourself, or there's a ton of businesses that have cropped up to deal with this exact problem, because you're a very important demographic. And there are a lot of businesses who would love to service this need, and there's just a ton of it out there. So if you have the way and what's the motivation? If you have the willingness, there are tons of different solutions to get you over that hurdle of the mountain of your stuff. That's a picture where we got to go over the mountain to get to the valley of contentment, or whatever is on the other side of that for you. Okay, so I'll leave that picture with you. So in order to get to the destination, we first of all have to know what the destination is, right? We have to understand why it's important, because otherwise you're not going to be as clear and intentional in your actions. It's going to just end up the way it's been so far, which is pushed into the future. So really establishing where you want to go, when you want to get there. But most importantly today, we're talking about the why. Why is this even a consideration? Why are we even considering it? When you know the why, the what and the when and the where will fall into place. So that brings us to the next section of our webinar today, which is catching a vision of what downsizing can do for you. We're basically trading a big house for a smaller house in most cases, not necessarily a house, but a home, a bigger home for a smaller home. And then it becomes, well, what is the benefit of that? What is the net gain? So I just move it forward in the slides here. We're going to talk about some blue sky thinking now. What would you do if you won the lottery? When I ask people this question, I get the same kinds of answers over and over again. One of them always involves traveling, right? That's what most people say they would want to do. They plan a trip of a lifetime. I've got mine all figured out. There's only one problem. I don't gamble, so I'm going to have to earn my trip of a lifetime the old-fashioned way with hard work and perseverance. But maybe you would want to travel around the world. If money was no object, maybe you would buy each of your kids a big house. Maybe that's what you would do. Or maybe it's more philanthropic motivations, and you would start some kind of charitable foundation, be like Bill and Melinda Gates and just give it all away before you left. Or some other kind of wild and crazy, generous philanthropic idea. So if this is the blue sky with money being no object, what catches your imagination as to what you'd want to do with that money? Well, the truth is, if we scale it back a bit, you can achieve this goal, these goals, whatever they may be. I'm going to tell you that the majority of my clients realize a pretty nice nest egg between whatever they're selling and if they choose to rebuy. Some people don't. Some people just go straight into a rental, in which case all of that money is working for you. So catching a vision will help to motivate you in terms of what this is going to benefit you by. There's two motivations in life, really, generally. Human nature is either driven by an avoidance of pain or a seeking of pleasure. So one of the things you know cognitively is that this is going to get harder. So the benefit is to avoid it being that difficult, doing it while this window of opportunity that we discussed exists for you in terms of your health, your well-being, your even mental resources to put to it, right? I notice that with my aging parents that they are much less resilient when it comes to stress, that change is much harder for them to adapt to. So you are in this kind of sweet spot right now where you have the ability and the willingness to exercise this plan, right? So maybe what you want to do is pay for a trip while you're still young enough to enjoy it. I think of my grandparents who scrimped and saved their entire adult lives. And when they passed away, we found out that my grandpa had $55,000 in a checking account. Crazy what that could have done when they were younger to, I'm not talking like in their 30s, but I'm just talking about even in their 60s to have, or 70s, if they had taken that trip to Hawaii or wherever it was that was really on their hearts to do. But they waited too long and the money sat there and never helped anybody until after they were gone. Maybe you would like to gift your children with a down payment on a property. It is not just your imagination that homes are less affordable than they were. I pulled up a really interesting statistic from the last census in Canada. And it is true. It is like a mountain how much more homes cost relative to income than when you purchased your home in the 70s or 80s or even 90s. Homes are doubling in price approximately every 8 to 10 years. And salaries certainly are. So wouldn't your children love that little hand help up while you can see them benefit by it? Maybe you would like to make a big tax donation to a charity and then see the tax deduction now while you can benefit by it. And then there's a lot of people who are also interested in paying off debt so that they can have an investment that helps their retirement. Like I said, bricks and mortar don't pay for a cruise. You have a lot of equity in your home. No matter where you live or what property you live in, virtually everyone I meet has a lot of money tied up in a home, but until you sell that home, it doesn't really help you. Even now, banks are getting more and more choosy about who they will allow to borrow against the equity. So if you are one of the few people who can get a HELOC or a home equity line of credit, you're very fortunate. Lots of people think that when it goes down the road, maybe they're going to pull out $50,000 or $100,000 to help with their retirement. It's very tough to get approved these days. So why wait until you have to make the move? Because you should be doing it because you want to, not because you have to. So I'm going to tell you that the majority of my clients are in the 60 to late 70s range, but more and more I am seeing people who are younger than that, people who are in my age bracket of being mid-50s, who are deciding to get rid of the house now that they're empty nesters. And it's not because they have to, it's just because they'd rather do more interesting things with the money than have it tied up in a house. So I love this cartoon. This will be me and Mr. I don't even know where Mr. is whenever he shows up, falling asleep in the gondola in Venice. Don't wait, like my grandparents, where they couldn't travel anymore, and one of them could and one of them couldn't, and so no traveling was done. Now I want to introduce another idea to you about what downsizing can do for you. And it's about your personal values and your personal priorities. And no right or wrong, no judgment. I just want you to make sure that you get out of the situation what's important to you. So I don't know if you've heard of this analogy about the big rocks, the little rocks, and the sand, but a lot of us get trapped by taking care of the less essential things in our day-to-day life and forgetting about the big goals and the big dreams we have, and then eventually they don't fit. So in the jar that you're looking at on the left, they've reversed the order of priority, that rather than dealing with the big issues that they want to accomplish in their retirement, they're just kind of frittering away the time with lesser goals. So I want to flip that on its head. And actually, this is a model that I use almost every day. I talk about, in my mind, what are the 3 big rocks that I need to accomplish? That could be mowing the lawn, getting clean laundry done, and getting grocery shopping. It doesn't necessarily relate to business, although I often do use this, where it's like, okay, I've got to call those agents, or touch base with those clients, or do that research, whatever it is. But this can be applied by anyone, no matter what the circumstances. And we want to make sure that in your retirement, that after downsizing, you have done what you have to do, and that it's not left off the list by accident or just by unthinking. So what are the things you must do with the proceeds of the sale of your home? What are the smaller things, the things that you would like to do? The wish list. So we've got must, we've got like to do, and then the sand. And it would be nice if there was money left over. So this is, again, kind of like the idea of a bucket list, but I don't love that kind of connotation. What I'd really rather you say is, what are your intentions for your downsizing? If you were to downsize and realize a nest egg of profit between what you sell for and if you buy, then what are you going to do with the money? And what can it do to enhance both your life and the lives of the people around you that you care about? Okay, so That's the intention of including this idea here. That's the why I've included this idea. Boop. So this is what downsizing will do for you. This is your personal application time. It has nothing to do with me, what my values are. It's not about the outcome of whether you sell your house or don't sell your house. This is simply about creating this vision statement of what your retirement is going to look like. I want you to focus on the 4 freedoms. There is freedom of time. There is freedom of money. There is freedom of purpose, and there is freedom of relationship. Let me explain the last 2. The first 2 are self-evident. You have a smaller house, you have less cleaning to do, you spend less time. You have a smaller house, you spend less money on utilities because it's a smaller house. That's clear. But what about freedom of purpose? Well, some of us are stuck in a holding pattern, and I have definitely felt this way before in my life, where we have goals that we want to accomplish, but our current life just doesn't support them. Like, I can only think of being free to do charitable work, for example. Say you wanted to travel and volunteer, and that was kind of a purpose, or you had a purpose that you really wanted to be there for your grandkids, but they're not living nearby anymore. This is about your kind of goals and opportunities that you're being held back from right now. And then the freedom of relationship, again, that has a lot to do with being able to go and visit and not have to worry about who's going to shovel the driveway so that the mailman doesn't slip and all of that, who's going to check to make sure the furnace is running so the pipes don't freeze. So being free to go and engage in relationships that really bring meaning to your life, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, so these, again, are somewhat abstract notions, but there are some very distinct things that I know you want to accomplish that are yet to be done, right? Maybe you belong to a club or a choir or a sporting group that would love to go and tour around and play the 7 best golf courses in the world, right? You've got friends that have invited you to go on a motorcycle vacation or to go on an RV excursion, and you just haven't been able to do it, either because you don't have the time, you can't leave your house, or you don't have the money. So we'd love to solve all of those obstacles for you. So this is for you. This is the why answered. I invite you to write this down. Put it on your fridge. Put it on your bathroom mirror, wherever it is. Because when you have these guideposts for you, it's going to help you make the best decision possible. So what do you want to have fewer of, less of, decreased after downsizing? Answers that I've heard before are things like, well, I want to have less furniture or fewer possessions. I want to have less responsibility. I want to have reduced bills to pay. All of those. Aggravation, worry, concern. You know, when my grandma had to go up and down the stairs to do her laundry, to go down to the basement to do her laundry, we were so worried about her. Maybe it's just a lack of less stress. Okay, and then the next part is more or increased. After downsizing, we want to have more or increased blank. Is it these freedoms that I've referenced here? I want to have more travel. I want to have more adventures. I want to have more learning. I want to go back to school. I don't even know, whatever it is for you. And then the last part is about, we're going to achieve less of this, more of this, but at the same time, we're going to keep what? Keep our friendships that are important to us, keep our social connections, maintain our lifestyle. Nobody is suggesting that you sell your beautiful house and go live in a cardboard box somewhere. If living in a beautiful space is important to you, well, then it's just a smaller, beautiful space. You want to maintain your autonomy. You want to maintain your healthy living. All of those things really, really matter. And this is the blueprint that we are going to use as the jumping off point for next week's presentation. We're going to take this vision and we're going to start narrowing it down to some specific, doable, actionable choices. Okay? So again, if you're one of these, just give me the bottom line. I apologize. This webinar has not scratched that itch, I'm sure, but I so strongly believe that this is only one part of your life. And I want to make sure that you have all the thinking done. And then after the thinking, you know what the next step is? It's the conversations with your kids, with your partner, with your friends. Start gathering up the information that will help you to make a really well-informed decision. In a multitude of counselors, there is wisdom. Okay, so next week, part 2, we're going to be taking this basis of understanding about ourselves, about our values, and we're going to start dealing with the nitty-gritty. Is now the right time for us? I know we really kind of just are putting this in a theoretical context today, but let's just talk about your age and stage next week when we do this again. What's happening in your life that is either the trigger to start the downsizing process, or what will be the trigger that would make this a good idea? What has to happen in your life to move you to the next home? And what about timing the market? Oh my gosh, this is such an important question that I deal with all the time. As soon as people find out that I'm a realtor, what do you think they ask? How's the market? To which I answer, which market? Condos? Detached? Richmond Hill? Thornhill? Like, there isn't one market, and we're going to talk about that. What are our property options? I hear this, I don't want to be in a condo. Well, I'm going to challenge you to say, well, what kind of condo are you thinking of? Are you thinking of a 600 square foot high-rise condo? Like, yeah, I don't blame you. I don't want that either. So let's just talk about what some of the other things are you might not have thought of. And I'm not a financial expert, but there are some broad strokes that I can guide you in about what makes financial sense, specifically about real estate, right? Like, what is the net value of moving outside the GTA? And I can speak to that. I wouldn't take any advice from me about balancing your checkbook, however. Okay, so finally, we'll also have an opportunity to answer any of your questions. We're going to do that now too. If there's anything that I have spoken about today that you'd like some clarification on, you know, you can enter into the chat box and type those questions, or you can unmute yourself and ask them just verbally, or you can follow up with an email if there's things that occur to you later. You will be getting a copy of this presentation. So I also want to tell you about our other options and opportunities that are always no cost, no obligation. Oops, sorry. This is always the way we do things. I really believe in the power of information, and that includes property options. So why not come with us on a virtual condo tour? I always try to choose a good variety, a cross section of what's available in the different neighborhoods that we service. And you can check that out and register online. Okay, so we are doing those every Tuesday. Condo Tour Tuesday, webinar Wednesday. Can you tell I used to be an English teacher? And then we also have our continuing series of the rest of our webinars. We're going to have part 2 of the Get Ready to Downsize. We also have our shoestring staging secrets on a shoestring budget. That's a popular one. And of course, the very, very critically important one, which is the decluttering challenge. How about we get a baseline value for your home established? What is your home worth? That's really going to dictate some of your options, right? So if you're looking to sell your home and net $300,000, what will the budget need to be in terms of selling what you purchase, right? There's our 30-day decluttering challenge. That's an email campaign that you can sign up for. And then finally, we have a Facebook page that we've started. It's a group where we are going to be having a Saturday safe social event. And this week we are doing bingo. It is virtual bingo with real prizes. I've got my bingo wheel over there from Amazon Prime, and we're going to have some fun. You're welcome to bring a friend. And we also have a contest this month about our referrals, sharing our emails that go out to you, to your friend base, family, people who you think might benefit by it. And we have some really terrific giveaways. We have a Canada Day basket. We've got yard signs. We're having custom yard signs printed up for Canada Day. Those are coming. So lots of great things to look forward to. Okay, so I am going to stop the share here and just ask you that if you have any questions, please type them into our chat box or unmute yourself, and then we can see what we have to answer for you in the next couple of minutes. Okay, so we have someone who is interested in bungalows. Yeah, there are some terrific neighborhoods that have bungalows. I really like Newmarket and Aurora for bungalows. What we find the further south, obviously the much more expensive they become, because it starts to bridge between whether or not the bungalow is going to be something for somebody to live in, or is it just property value because it's a big wide 60-foot lot and they can put a McMansion on them. So I noticed that you mentioned North York. You know that development has happened like up Yonge Street chronologically. So the older bungalows in North York are becoming very rare because, like I said, they have a great value for putting up a McMansion. We start going a little further north into Aurora or even Newmarket. There are pockets of newer bungalows. By newer, I mean 20 years old, not 70 years old like they are in Willowdale. I have several people who are on searches specifically for a bungalow. And we're looking at probably between $850 and $950 in most cases, which is certainly a lot less than you would expect you would pay in North York. Any other questions? Just going to double check. Okay. Well, if you have any questions in, the days or weeks to come, if you'd like to take advantage of any of our other options and services, please reach out to us. We're so happy that you were here today. And I hope this has helped you to bring some clarity to your own downsizing journey. That's the entire goal. We're going to get more practical next week. So I hope you'll come back for part 2. And even better, I hope you'll invite a friend. Okay. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I hope you have a lovely day. Bye for now.